The views and opinions of the following show do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of News Talk 1450 WOL, Radio 1 Incorporated, or their management.
Welcome to Beyond Just Talk. This is a positive, inspirational, and thought-provoking program that discusses life and business topics from a solution-oriented perspective with your host, S.L. Young.
All right, welcome. It's another great day, and we're ready to discuss subjects that will make a difference in your day. This is the place that people connect, ideas are shared, and lives are enriched. My name is Stacey Young. My author's name is S.L. Young, but please call me Sly. Before we get started today, next week, my guest is a woman who is making sure that history doesn't get lost. She's one of a few individuals that possesses the skill that has historical significance and was also used to communicate messages that provide essential direction to many who dared, along with brave themselves, to go on this dangerous journey. For this week, we'll do a recap of last week's show, discuss Minority Mental Health Awareness Month, have a conversation with my special guest, April Boyd Nerona, and my featured guest, Charles Britt, who is a science, technology, engineering, and math, otherwise known as STEM, education advocate, speaker, and entrepreneur. And we'll also preview next week's guest. On last week's show, it was a very informative hour in which the topic of July being Minority Mental Health Awareness Month was discussed. I shared information about my latest article entitled, "Someone Stopped and Listened, It's the Only Reason I'm Still Alive," or its title in the Huffington Post, "I Was Almost Another Suicide Statistic." I didn't imagine the amount of response that would be generated by my article. Over the past week, I've received many heartfelt notes and messages from individuals who have lost loved ones due to depression. A Facebook post from Max Corder, who shared information about the day his son, Alex, took his life. According to Mr. Corder, he was a very healthy, non-smoking, non-drinking, non-drug-taking, loving, and seemingly carefree man. However, one Sunday morning, the family was preparing to go to church as they normally did. Mr. Corder wrote, "When he didn't come down, his mother went up to see him. He was lying on his bed and with a gunshot wound through his temple." Another Facebook post from Margaret Ross Maddox provided insight about her husband's suicide at 22. She wrote, "He called his cousin before he did it. His cousin was at work and didn't come to the phone. I came home and found him dead. Well, it's been 28 years, but I always wondered why he called his cousin. Your article solved that for me. He probably didn't want to die, but didn't know how to sort through the fog." These very personal stories, along with the one I shared last week about Mrs. Mary Hansen, who wrote to me last March about her son, Brian, who took his life, are the reasons that depression and mental health must stop being conversations that are whispered in private, if it's even discussed at all. We, as a society, must remove these unwarranted, unneeded, and unnecessary stigmas to save lives. The change starts with beginning to have age-appropriate discussions about depression and mental health as early as elementary school. I didn't know, understand, or realize the importance of mental health or related conversations until it happened to me. As a result of not knowing the best way to deal with it, being ashamed to share the way I felt, and not wanting to tell anyone about my struggles due to fears about being evaluated or judged, it led to me being moments from taking my life. Based on the information I've shared about depression and mental health this month, please don't be afraid to discuss anyone's mental health. Also, if someone says to you that something just doesn't feel right, please make a commitment to yourself that, as I've created a new hashtag, I will stop and listen. If you or anyone you know needs assistance, please contact the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255 or at suicidepreventionlifeline.org. If you'd like to review my collection of materials that address depression on many different levels, including the article referenced today, this information is available at slyoung.com/depression.html. Now moving on to last week's discussions about writing, directing, and filmmaking. My guest, Barry Gribble, discussed his indirect path to fulfill his passions to become an award-winning writer and director. Mr. Gribble discussed the importance of following your passions. He suggested that anyone who isn't sure about their passions ask themselves this question: if money wasn't an issue, what would I do? This might seem a little off-putting to some, but this is a way to identify something that is of importance to you. He also discussed the importance of not allowing anyone to discourage your creative endeavors. Mr. Gribble encourages individuals to learn to listen to their internal voice or their inner voice. Some of the other salient points discussed during our conversation was don't be afraid to take risks to learn and discover your process for learning, which might not mean following a traditional path. Formal education is a good option, but there's also the ability to learn from trial and error, talking with others in your field, and exploration. Sometimes you have to take a leap of faith to relocate to be closer to those who are doing the work you want to do. It can lead to increased opportunities to learn and be discovered. And the last point that he made was that learn from your failures as much as possible. Process your feelings about it. Make a decision as to the next steps, and actively choose to move forward quickly. If you want to learn more about Mr. Gribble's work, please visit integralarts.com. That's integralarts.com. If you missed our conversation, you can listen to it on my website at slyoung.com/bjt-radio.html. If you'd like to connect with me after the show, you can reach me on my website at slyoung.com, on Facebook at facebook.com/beyondjusttalk, one word, or locate me on Twitter, Google+, Instagram, and SoundCloud using the handle slyoungva. Now, before I continue with today's show, I want to welcome a special guest, April Boyd Noronha, who will provide insight into the importance of STEM education from a female's perspective. Mrs. Boyd Noronha is the Chief Solutions Architect at the STEM Broker. Her primary role is to consult with corporate clients in workforce development and community engagement, which focuses on K-12 STEM career readiness and information skills. April Boyd Noronha, welcome to Beyond Just Talk.
And thank you so much, Stacy. Glad to be here.
Well, thank you. Glad to have you on. And please call me Sly.
Oh, yes, Sly.
Yeah, thanks. And so why is it important for students to learn about STEM careers options at an early age?
Well, it is the earlier the better is my main mantra at this point. Having been a STEM advocate for many years now, and as an adult transitioning fully into it, I see the pitfalls and the bridges that need to be built in order to really prepare young people, the earlier the better, for what lies ahead. At this stage, we see corporate America, Silicon Valley centric type workplaces that are still struggling, and these people are adults. Mm-hmm. These people have been in the industry for years, and they, females in particular, are struggling with finding the utopia of still staying in STEM, which is what they love. Mm. So if they're still at this point as an adult after years of training and being in the industry struggling with how do I still survive, we've got to reach back so much more earlier to our girls and prepare them where my main focus is career readiness.
Right. And so speaking about career readiness, what type of coursework should students take to properly prepare for a STEM career?
Well, and the interesting dynamic with entering or pursuing a STEM career is there is not really a particular path that they have to take. When you look at many executives and those that are successful in this field, many have stumbled upon that industry or stumbled upon that niche that they found that have made them popular or prosperous in that particular field. So, of course, there are particular courses that you will need to take, the math, the science, but coupled with that equally is the career readiness and the soft skills aspect, which from adult to young people, we're still missing the mark in that critical area.
And I'm glad that you brought up soft skills. So what type of soft skills would you encourage students, young adults, or experienced professionals who might want to transition into STEM to have or to develop?
Right. Interesting enough, I read an article yesterday where it was examining the dynamics between the lean-in philosophy, which Sheryl Sandberg in her memoir in 2013 brought up, but the new transition is to the lean-out. With Elisa Shavinsky has just released a book focusing on that, where the theme is to create your own spaces. And what I tell my own two daughters who are teen aspiring engineers is to chart your own course. Right. Now, of course, you have the basics that need to be there, but since we already know, the writing is on the wall, we already know that there will be the stigma, there will be the talent gap and things of that sort. How do they need to deal with that now? And that is my main mission, as I mentioned before, as I'm transitioning into the career in IT and security, safety, security. But I know now what my own 2 daughters will go through, so that is my mission at this point, to let the girls know it's coming.
Right. And actually, let's back up for a moment, because one of the things that you just mentioned that I think is very important is about being able to have the fortitude to chart your own path and your own course. And sometimes that might not be the path that your parents want, that your friends want, or the way that your schools are telling you to go. So why is that essentially important?
Well, it's essentially important because the world of STEM it's a vast canvas just waiting to be drawn. I was talking to another advocate in the area, and she had wanted to be a computer science major, did not have the basic math or level of math needed to really be successful in that field. She transitioned. She went back to the drawing board, did not give up, and tweaked her mission or her goal, and ended up still being in IT, but in health IT. So the possibilities are unlimited, and we must show the girls or the young people at a younger age that is the failure, not necessarily the failure, but the learning, the process, and learning what is needed is a part of the process.
Right.
That's the beauty of your journey in STEM.
Yeah, and you actually brought up another, I'm sorry, if I could just jump in real quick, because you brought up another great point, which is about you might have a certain skill set, and that skill set might be applied in one area, but it actually could be applied in a lot of different areas as well, right?
Exactly. When I say that the path has yet to be paved for the depth of where STEM careers can go, it's still unlimited. There's so much of an untapped market, industry, niche that is yet to be even discovered. And that is the beauty of STEM, whether it's science, technology, engineering, or math, or a bit of all.
Right. And we got about another minute left in this segment, so I want to get in a couple of quick questions. So why is it important for girls to be trained in STEM?
You know, for my particular, and I'll speak personally for my experience, it's not that job security is the only reason why that you want to pursue a career, but that is one of the areas, I mean, with any statistic that you choose or look at, the playing field is wide open. Why not jump in? Well,
that's great. So what's being done to encourage and support young girls to become interested in STEM at an early age?
Well, I'll tell you, once again, from my viewpoint as an educator and as a life skills trainer for youth, is that it has to start with the career readiness. The nuts and the bolts of learning science, technology, engineering, and math, that'll be there. There are curriculums that can be built that can be offered on any college campus. That's there.
All right, well, we're going to have to leave it right there. So, Ms. Boyd Noronha, thanks for being on Beyond Just Talk. I wish you the best of luck with the important work you're doing to develop the next generation of STEM leaders. If you'd like to learn more about Mrs. Boyd Noronha's work, please visit thestembroker.com. Folks, we're just getting started today. There's still more to discuss about the importance of STEM on many different levels, so stay tuned.
BCNews.com.
Good morning, SWR Traffic Update brought to you by Noodles & Company. On the outer loop of the Beltway, after St. Barnabas Road before Branch Avenue, 3 left lanes are blocked with debris in the roadway. So you're squeezing by to the right, outer loop, as you head past St. Barnabas Road on your way up to Branch Avenue. Very, very slow, unexpectedly so. On the Beltway outer loop after Colesville Road, very slow to Connecticut Avenue. Noodles & Company, lunch is different. Different is made to order, sautéed fresh, 1 pan at a time. Different is better. Noodles & Company, made different. Now your WOL weather forecast brought to you by the Foundation for a Better Life. For today, afternoon thunderstorms possible, a high around 92. For tonight, gradual clearing down to 69 for low. Tomorrow, mostly sunny, highs in the upper 80s. Winston Churchill's words stirred his country in the face of defeat. Today they inspire us to reach for our own victories. Commitment, pass it on from the Foundation for a Better Life at values.com. Steve Hirschhorn for News Talk 1450 WOL, where information is power.
News Talk 1450 WOL AM, where information is power.
Welcome back to Beyond Just Talk with your host, S.L. Young.
All right, folks, welcome back. You're listening to Beyond Just Talk with S.L. Young. If you'd like to join our conversation, you can dial in at 1-800-450-7876. Before we continue on, let me tell you what's coming up on today's show. We'll discuss the unlikely journey my featured guest took to work for the Central Intelligence Agency and with the U.S. intelligence community for over 12 years. The importance of this type of work generally to him, and specifically for individuals of color, and then the reasons that he decided to stop working in national security to accept the STEM educational coordinator position at the Northern Virginia Community College, fondly known as NOVA, to give back. The significance of being a mentor, especially for minority communities and black males in particular, to encourage them to pursue STEM careers, and considerations for the reasons that STEM education should be included in school curriculums starting at an early age. Before I introduce today's guest, I want you to know that this is a very important topic, so if you want to join the conversation, I encourage you to do so. So my guest today, Charles Britt, is a STEM education advocate, speaker, and entrepreneur. He's a first-generation college graduate who succeeded despite difficult life circumstances, including leaving home at 15. He previously worked for the Central Intelligence Agency to protect U.S. interests domestically and abroad. However, after working with the U.S. intelligence community for over 12 years, he was driven to do more in STEM education because of its significance to national security protections and competitiveness. Now, without further ado, I welcome my guest, who is a national security veteran, someone who works tirelessly to give back, and the inspirational STEM program coordinator at the Northern Virginia Community College, Charles Britt. Welcome to Beyond Just Talk.
Thank you, Sly. Good morning.
Well, good morning. So one of the things we love to do with our guests when they come in is to find out a little bit about them personally before we jump into the interview. So who is Charles Britt?
Good question. I finally have come to embrace that I'm really sort of an old soul. For a long time when I was growing up, he would say that I was well beyond my years as far as my thoughts around what I wanted to do with my life, where I wanted to go. And I'm still that way now. And even as a young, quote unquote, young professional in this generation, I think I'm part of either X or Y, one of those. It's very clear to me that I still hold true to those morals of the older generation of respecting others, believing in yourself, and making sure that you're having an impact on those around you. Despite my demeanor, a lot of folks will meet me and they'll see me and even photos and they'll say, wow, he's a very serious type of person. But despite all that, actually I love humor. Right. I love cracking jokes. I love witty humor and things of that nature. So oftentimes when I'm talking to students on campus or I'm giving presentations, people are shocked that after they read my bio, this guy gets up and cracks jokes, and it's kind of funny about how I bring about my experiences and what I've lived through. But I think I find humor to be very therapeutic, and it's one of the things that people tend to like much about me. I am single. I don't have kids.
And ready to mingle.
Exactly, and ready to mingle. I spend a lot of time working with youth because I do love children, but I feel like I have so many that I've helped and worked with and groomed that sooner or later down the road, I will settle down and get some of those things out of the way. But right now, I'm sort of really passionate about the work that I do and finding a way to build myself to be a greater impact to those around me.
Yeah, and that's absolutely wonderful. And, you know, it's sort of interesting because one of the things that you were just talking about in reference to whether folks consider you to be serious or not when they meet you. And it's sort of interesting because we had a conversation over the weekend as I was developing the press release for your appearance on the show. And I said, you've got this wonderful background. There's a lot of great stuff in here, but there's nothing about you as a person that makes you personable. And then once I started talking to you, then we were able to open up, and then I gave you some pointed questions, and then I was able to pull out a little bit more information. So I know that you definitely have a lot more personality than you necessarily represent.
Exactly. It's one of those things that I sort of took away from my last job, that I'm very guarded. I protect my information.
Right. Understand.
So I've got to be able to trust you to be able to kind of open up.
Well, hopefully you're going to trust me today because I'm going to be prying just a little bit.
Yes. Thank you.
So one of the things that was interesting about your background, even before we get into some of the technical educational aspects, is that you've had to overcome some challenging life circumstances. So tell us a little bit about that, if you wouldn't mind, and then what advice do you offer to someone who's in a similar situation?
And I don't consider my situation to be very unique at all. Don't get me wrong. We know the statistics. I did grow up in a single-parent home whose father was not really in my life. I had a fabulous mom who joined the military. We traveled a lot because of her career in the military. And what I consider one of those difficult things was really building relationships and bonds with folks. If you're a military brat, you move around a lot. I didn't have a lot of friends. I was always tend to be that oddball person who was the quote unquote nerd in class. So as I moved from place to place to place, it was difficult for me to kind of build relationships and bonds with folks. So you talk about my story of where I left home at 15. My mom was making a transition from where we lived here in Virginia to move back to Indiana, and I sort of had kind of gotten to a point in my life where I was ready to stand still for a while. So I made the decision to remain in the D.C. area while my mom moved back to Indiana. It's totally a long story, and we've had our conversations about this
right.
at that age, but it's really has motivated and driven me to have the story that I have now to succeed in life despite all the things that may have not have been on the right trajectory when I started out.
Right, and some of those early challenges that we have, and this is why I think it's essentially important for kids to be challenged and not give everybody a trophy, because when we have those moments of adversity, those are the things that help us to remember, to get tougher, to be better in the long run. Because I know from a personal experience, I've gone through some tough times, and because of those tough times, I'm actually better because of, not in spite of. Do you believe that you're better because of those?
I do believe that I'm better. I think that it has made me very resilient. I think that it has caused me to look at the world in a different light. I will say that. And it's caused me also to not take certain things for granted. A lot of people grow up, as we say, with a silver spoon in their mouth, can't appreciate what it's like to have to struggle to put food on the table as my mom did, or struggle to figure out how to make ends meet, or where am I going to go with my next situation. Those challenges do that for you, and I'm grateful for it.
Yeah, it's interesting. So sometimes what I hear folks say is, well, your journey is not that bad, or it's not that difficult. Well, that's easy to make those statements if you've never been through anything that's extremely difficult.
Yeah.
And until you walk into somebody else's shoes and actually have lived what they've lived, because you don't know that one moment that you're judging might be one thing that was the last thing that broke somebody, because you don't know about all the history that came before that.
True.
So we have to be very careful about making those type of statements and assumptions. And so the other thing that I think it's important to discuss is, because you've had this challenged background, some individuals might believe that because of coming from that type of background that might not be as well off, that your dreams of pursuing an education might be limited, right? So what advice do you offer to others that might, have folks in their environment that said, you've had a difficult life before, it's not going to get any better, don't even worry about dreaming? Because didn't you have that happen to you too?
I did, and I went to a local school district here where there wasn't really a college-going culture. If you wanted to go, if you were the top of the class, you were the valedictorian, it was expected that you would go to college. But the rest of the 95% of the students that were going through public schools were not really encouraged to look at what their options were beyond high school or college. And because there were so many other things that schools were dealing with testing and things like that. And there were individuals that sort of, gave me this, what do you plan to do after college? Are you going to go straight to work? And in my mind, based on the experiences of folks in my family, since I'm a first-generation grad, I thought going to work was the next best step for me. And it took someone else, a teacher, coming to me and sort of making me realistically look at the fact that there are other options beyond just going straight to work. There's college, there's military, there's so many other things that you could consider, but you have to seek them out. You've got to ask if you want to know some things. So if you have dreams, you have to share them with folks. Because you never know who's around you who may be able to assist you with making that dream a reality.
And that's another great point, because what you just said that I really appreciate is that one person stopped and had a conversation with you, and that changed your belief system, and it changed the trajectory of where you were actually heading. So it's important that if you see someone who has potential or certain skills, that you stop and have a conversation and let them know that you notice, that they're valuable, that they're appreciated, because they might not have anybody else that's going to provide that direction, and that might be one lost life that's heading in the wrong direction.
Oh, it was key. I have to tell you, the teacher's name, Miss Walker and Miss Vanna, had two teachers. It was key to my success that those individuals saw something in me, not just academically, but personally, that I was able to, I had the potential to move forward. And like you said, like I mentioned, growing up in a school where being smart wasn't the most popular thing, I had very low self-esteem and thought, I'm just going to kind of lay low with my books. But I had teachers and folks in my life who basically told me that's not a bad thing. And the path that you're on now could take you so much further if you believed in yourself.
Yeah, and one of the other things that you just mentioned, unfortunately we don't have time to talk about it today, is sometimes the stigmas of being that intelligent kid in the classroom and trying to overcome that as well, because that has its own implications.
Yes, it does.
Unfortunately, we don't have time to discuss that.
Yes.
So how does someone who wasn't planning to go to college end up with a job at the Central Intelligence Agency?
Oh, man, I get that question all the time. It's really something that I'm really surprised about, because for one, when I got the job, I didn't even really know who the CIA was outside of what I saw in television or a James Bond movie. So I had no clue what they wanted to do. When I went off to college to major in computers and to get a degree in IT, oftentimes people would talk about internships and jobs. My first summer, I was participating in a program called Inroads. They put me in an internship at the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., and I did help desk work. So I walked around, I fixed computers, changed out hard drives. So I really kind of thought, as a college student making a little bit of money, this is the path that I'm going to be on. This is great. But my dream job was to become an FBI agent. I don't know why, but I really wanted to become an FBI agent. So I had sent them my resume. I had gone to some of their information sessions. But it was there was one conference that I attended. I was a member and currently a member of the National Society of Black Engineers, which was very instrumental. It's a national organization that prepares African-American students for success in STEM careers. Mm-hmm. I went to one of their conferences, gave my resumes out, and the CIA happened to be one of those places that I gave my resume to, even as a sophomore. And so it wasn't until about 3 years later, how slow the government can be. 3 years later, they contacted me and was like, hey, we have your resume on file. You're interested in working.
Long forgotten.
I had long forgotten even how they got my resume. But unfortunately, it happened to be because of the tragic events of September 11th that the agency had a charge to really respond to that. And they were ramping up and bringing in the professionals and folks they need. And I happened to be at the right place at the right time with the right set of skills to get that telephone call.
Right. And so in doing that type of work, were you ever worried about your safety?
I was initially. I mean, if you think about it, you see the movies of James Bond jumping off of buildings and things like that. I sort of thought that's what they were recruiting me to doing, but I had no clue that they were really after the technical skills that I had that are just important to the mission of the agency and the work that they do. So I felt safe. Most of my work was done here domestically in the United States behind fortified walls and buildings. Mm-hmm. So working in a computer room, doing some of the stuff that I had learned in school for the agency still helped to meet the mission, but didn't put me on the front lines of some of the things that we often see on television.
Right. So let's transition a little bit and talk about your STEM career. So was a STEM career something that you always wanted to do?
I can't say that it was. Initially, like most students that I run into, I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I know what type of career my mother had. I know what some careers that other folks in my family in Indiana had, but STEM at that time wasn't the buzzword. It was, or what type of field are you going to go into, whether it be technical or are you going to go into law enforcement? I wasn't too sure, but I knew that I liked computers. That's one thing I will say. We didn't have one at home, but most of my favorite classes in the work that I did was in computers, so I knew that moving forward, that would be the focus, at least, that I wanted to go into, was learning how to work with computers.
Right. And then, so what were some of the computer classes that you took?
Wow. Back then, when I graduated high school, it was like basic computers, learning how to type, how to create a paper. We didn't have internet access, and I know a lot of students won't believe that just, the late 90s, there was not a lot of internet access in public schools. So just the basic computing of computers and things like that.
All right, so let's pick up with this conversation right after the break.
News updates on the web at WOLDCnews.com.
This report brought to you by Maryland Auto Insurance. If you've ever been turned down or canceled by car insurance companies, check out Maryland Auto Insurance. They'll insure you guaranteed. Find an agent at mymarylandauto.com. A suspect in 4 murders at a D.C. mansion is due back in court in September after yesterday's preliminary hearing. Darren Wint is accused of killing 3 members of the Sabopoulos family and their housekeeper in May and setting the house on fire. Prosecutors said Wint's DNA was found on pizza crust at the home and in the family's stolen car. Police are investigating a collision between a MARC train and a truck in Sulphur Spring. Victor Willingham was a passenger on the train yesterday afternoon.
A couple of people, so those people, from my understanding, have already been removed from the train and transported by ambulance away.
But no serious injuries were reported in the accident between Forest Glen and Seminary Roads. Maryland's governor is back in the hospital.
Governor Hogan is undergoing more chemotherapy treatments as he battles non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Now, during his first round of chemotherapy treatments, Hogan was in the hospital for 5 days. Hogan said on Friday that he hopes the second round will go as easy as the first one. Hogan says he continues to work while undergoing the treatments, though Lieutenant Governor Boyd Rutherford has filled in for various public appearances. I'm Doug Parrish.
D.C. police are searching for a suspect after 3 people are stabbed in Northeast. One was seriously injured last night on the 500 block of 50th Place. Metro says it's creating a new position, Fire Liaison. PG County Fire Chief Mark Bashore says it's a good move.
I believe that the liaison will be able to provide that critical information in the first couple of minutes of an incident that would improve our response.
A uniformed fire officer is joining Metro's Rail Control Center full-time. This report brought to you by the Maryland State Highway Administration. SHA will reduce travel lanes on Maryland 97, Georgia Avenue, and Randolph Road. This major traffic work starts at 9 p.m. on Friday, July 24th. Plan ahead to avoid delays. I'm John Lewis. When you're looking for news from Black America, go to newsone.com.
Welcome back to Beyond Just Talk with your host, S.L. Young.
All right, folks, welcome back. Today, my featured guest is Charles Britt, and we're talking about the importance of STEM education and careers today. Prior to the break, we were talking about some of the classes that Mr. Britt took in order to develop the skills required to have this type of a career. But surprisingly, what he was saying is they didn't even have a lot of the computer technologies that we have today. So how did you develop those skills then?
For me, it was, again, as April mentioned, sort of the trial and error. I graduated top of my class. I was number 3 in my class. So I did well in math. I did well in science. But you have to really know where your strengths and weaknesses are. I fared very well in the SAT. But when I got to college, I found myself, after being tested in, I had to take remedial math, which was a shock to me. You know, graduating with 3.9 GPA, but I have to take remedial math. I had signed up for an engineering program and was not really prepared for the rigor of engineering. There were certain courses that I should have taken.
Or just being ready at the college level?
I think it was.
Both.
I think it was a combination of both.
Okay.
I think it was a combination of both. I remember as a student, I rarely took books home. I rarely did a lot of studying. I kind of came in, I took the test, and I passed. Where in college, you can't do that. There's a lot of note taking. There's a lot of studying that happens after class is out. So that was a setback for me. It was a struggle, and a lot of students, particularly African Americans, who started it in the same program, they dropped out or they transferred to another school because they didn't want to have to deal with the rigor. So I had a very frank conversation with my advisor, which is great, to seek out help and assistance. I talked to them about my challenges, and he just recommended that I change majors. He says, I think, you've got the skill sets, but I think if you change majors, you won't have to be on such a rigorous course. So I changed from engineering to IT, or information technology. And it was a much better path for me because it directed me more toward the computer courses. And when you ask how was I able to do it, it was my interest in it. That's why I tell students all the time, find out what it is that interests you. What is it that you really like to do? The classes that I took in website development, learning how computers work in networking, how does the internet work? We took classes in security. All that stuff was fascinating, interesting to me. So it was never a dull moment through the 4 years of college. Even while I was working, I actually worked while I was in college in the field. It kept me motivated because it was something that I was interested in. So it was the perseverance. It was really kind of keeping with it and knowing that there's going to be a benefit in the end.
But one of the things that you just said is, try to figure out what you're good at and then apply that. But what if I'm a student or someone who is trying to make a career transition and I don't know what my skills are? How do I sort of figure that out?
That's very good. One, ask folks, ask people around you. What do they see as some of your biggest strengths and your traits? The other way to do that is to get some on-the-job experience. Try out a few things. I encourage students all the time to volunteer. Finding opportunities to volunteer in their community in a capacity, such as they're always looking for people to do database entry. They're always looking for folks to get engaged with marketing, or nonprofits have all types of needs. And that's one way for you to really get a feel for what type of job you like without having to worry about getting fired because you're not doing a good job.
Right. Well, that's great. And then, so based on your extensive STEM expertise, what advice do you have for individuals who want to work in this field?
I much like what April, another STEM advocate in another part of the country, mentioned before, is really to get out there and explore the variety of options. STEM is such a broad field. There's an aspect of STEM in pretty much every job. You can think about even where we're here in the radio station. There are folks that have technical degrees that are working in the backgrounds to make sure this equipment works. So I tell people to look at the broad range of options that are available to them and figure out where you think you could do best. And it's never too late. Just because you didn't start out as a youngster, I think I know tons of folks who basically were career changers who went into IT or went into security or engineering and found it to be rewarding, but they have to know where your niche is. There's just so many opportunities available. You have to do your homework and talk to people who actually do the job. I encourage that as well. Find someone who does that line of work and ask them what are the pluses and minuses of doing this line of work, and will it be a good fit for you and where you are in your life at that time.
Right. And so we've been talking about STEM, and STEM, if you joined a little bit earlier, is science, technology, engineering, and math. So that is just a label. So what does it mean if we break it down to have a STEM education or a STEM career?
What that means is, particularly with the program that we do at NOVA, the Northern Virginia Community College, is to really help students understand the importance of really mastering the coursework and understanding of science. So that's the biology, that's your physics, that's your earth sciences, really understanding technology, how we use computers, engineering design, and critical thinking, and then, of course, all the math courses that go along with that. I always tell folks I'm an advocate of STEM, but that's not to say that every child's going to be an engineer. Every child's not going to be a scientist, and I understand that. But in order for you to thrive in the 21st century workforce, you have to have a basic understanding of where STEM fits into your job. Even if you're an attorney, attorneys hire IT folks and security people all the time to do work on behalf of their clients. So you've got to understand, well, what type of folks do I need in order to do my job as an engineer? As a lawyer. Even doctors are using a lot more technology and robotics and doing surgeries and things like that. So it's across the total aspect of jobs and careers and the way things are going now that students should be prepared and understand what that means and hone in on the key skills that they need to be successful in the job that they want. You don't have to be an excellent at science. I was not the 100% best in math, but I tell students if you get the basics down, I think that'll give you at least the foundation to move into a variety of career options.
Right. So if I'm interested in going into a STEM field, do I just need the science, or do I just need the engineering, or do I need engineering and math, or science and technology? How do I sort of figure out which ones I need?
You need a little bit of everything.
Okay.
And that's what we've been working with our local school district on, is what we call integrated STEM education, which means that we integrate a little bit of science, technology, engineering, and math in everything that teachers teach. So that you don't, again, I'm not saying that everyone has to be an expert in everything, but school districts across the nation and parents should be sort of pushing this, that their kids get this integrated into what they're learning. So if we're talking about, let's say, for instance, what happened in Egypt with the pyramids and how the pyramids were built, oftentimes stuff like that is brought up in maybe a history class. But there's also engineering in that. How did they build these marvels that are still standing hundreds and hundreds of years later?
Right.
What types of math? Think about it. They had to use algebra. There was a facet of math that was used in that. So you just don't isolate it to talking about those types of subjects in one area, such as history, but there's ways that you can incorporate the science, the engineering, in all of these different topics.
That was another great point that you brought up, is to be able to have this breadth of knowledge so that you understand things across the spectrum.
Yes.
And not just in one specific area. So it's important to have depth. Don't
Correct.
get me wrong,
Yes.
but we need to have breadth as well, because when you have that breadth knowledge where you can look across not just what you're doing, but what you're doing and how it impacts other folks and
Yes.
other technologies and other areas, then you have a better understanding of the whole picture versus your specific specialty.
Exactly.
So let's shift just a little bit and talk about things from a parent's perspective. So what about parents who are trying to guide their children toward a STEM career? What advice do you have?
One thing I would say is definitely become engaged with your child's education. Become engaged, understand what types of programs your school offers, particularly here in Northern Virginia where we work. Fairfax County and a lot of the schools have lots of opportunities for students to get involved in programming, but they leave it up to choice. What does the child want to get involved with? And oftentimes the child will take the path of least resistance, as you can imagine, and do what's easy for them. But parents have to come in and say, what do I, with my child's dreams and aspirations, what do they need to be involved and engaged with in order to move forward? So becoming educated yourself. I know it's extra work. Parents are working jobs and trying to take care of the home, but there is some time that has to be set aside with you trying to become familiar with what your child is really good at, what your child aspires to do, and how you can connect them to opportunities that are taking place in the community to help build that child's confidence in their skills and in their knowledge and moving forward. It's very important.
And if I'm trying to identify some of these resources that might be out there for my child, where should I go look?
Tons of websites out there. Definitely start with some of the larger associations. I tell people all the times, I speak fondly of the National Society of Black Engineers at nsbe.org is great for African American students, or there's a Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers, and that's shpe.org. These websites are a great start for parents, particularly in minority communities, to go and at least get a foundation of where do I begin. And even on these websites, a lot of them have toolkits, which basically is a step-by-step guide for parents to kind of go through to look at some of the things that they want to do with their children. websites are one. Also, being connected to college or university that has an engineering program. In our area, we're fortunate to have several. They also have outreach where if you can go to their website, they'll talk about ways that parents can come in and get involved or maybe do tours of the school to learn more about what the programs have to offer and how they can connect their kids, not only for stuff in the classroom, but they also have tons of summer opportunities as well.
Right, and so are those summer opportunities just at the college level as part of their curriculum, or do the local high schools, maybe in your area, have that?
The local high schools have them as well. I didn't want to leave that off, but yes, consider local high schools as well. I know we run summer camps around robotics. We started a camp this year around cybersecurity, and we're also doing a camp on coding and teaching kids how to code as young as third grade. Wow. I get tons of I get calls from parents all the time asking, what more can my child get? But oftentimes you find out when we get these camps filled and folks come, they're not filled with the population that we're really trying to recruit, which are those underserved, families and communities that are underrepresented in STEM often don't show up to these events.
Right.
And it really starts, and people say, well, how do parents find out? You've got to do your research. You've got to talk to other parents who may have had their children engaged in these things and be proactive about getting the information so that your child can take part. Because we give scholarships for students that are on free or reduced lunch, and they're oftentimes they go unused because we just can't reach that population.
Right, and I think talking about trying to develop your skills or identify your skills, I know that as part of my development, I stumbled through and sort of figured out where it was that I eventually wanted to be. And it wasn't until high school that when I really got engaged around my senior year that I started to participate in some of the clubs and activities that were there. But one of the things that actually benefited me was to participate in some of these competitions. So there was like forensics, which was a speaking competition. Yes. So are there types of competitions that from the elementary or junior high or high school level that someone who's interested can tinker in it before they fully immerse themselves in the coursework?
Oh my goodness. There are so many, I can't even imagine where to start. There are tons of STEM competitions at every grade level, elementary, middle, and high, in almost every subject of science, technology, and engineering. I would encourage folks to visit my website or contact me. I'm at charlesbritt.com, very simple, CharlesBritt.com. And on there, you'll find contact information for me, as well as links to programs that I'm currently engaged with. But I'd be happy to share information with any of the listeners about websites that they can go to where they can gain information about all these different competitions.
Yeah, and I know that another thing that you do is you openly and you seek out other folks to partner with, because the caller that was on, my special guest earlier today, Miss April Boyd Nerona.
Yes,
the two of you, through a connection that we've all made, have started to work together on some things as well.
Yes, we have, and I will definitely like to share more information about that. It's currently developed, but we are looking to do sort of a STEM empowerment tour where we're going to get together STEM empowerment tours. But I that's not the official title. Okay. But more information to come. We're going to start hitting the road, going to communities around the country and explaining to parents and kids, imploring them to really get their kids involved in these careers. Because if you want to have sustainability, job security, and wealth and build the life that you want to live, you've got to connect your children to these opportunities in STEM.
Yeah, and it's important to get your children, or even young adults, or even experienced professionals who are looking to do a transition, an opportunity to be engaged on a lot of different levels.
Yes, very much so.
All right, so folks, we're going to need to take another break, and we'll talk to you in a few moments.
BCNews.com.
Good morning. This WOL Traffic Update is brought to you by Maryland Auto Insurance. On North Capitol Street, everything is still blocked off between Chilham Place and Sheridan Street because of the ongoing water main work there. That is still there on 295 southbound and delay from Benning Road to East Capitol Street, but everything there is open. If you've been turned down or canceled by car insurance companies, check out Maryland Auto Insurance. They'll insure you, guaranteed. Find an agent at mymarylandauto.com. Now your WOL weather forecast brought to you by Food Lion for today. Scattered thunderstorms possible this afternoon, highs in the low 90s. Clearing overnight down to 69, and then for tomorrow, mostly sunny, high near 89. Visit your local Food Lion for MVP. Hot sales like a pint of blueberries, $1.99 each, and select varieties of Lay's family-sized potato chips. Buy one, get one free. Limit 2. Life's better with the Lion. Food Lion. Steve Hirschhorn for News Talk 1450 WOL AM, where information is power.
Welcome back to Beyond Just Talk with your host, S.L. Young.
All right, folks, we're continuing our conversation with Charles Britt, who works at the Northern Virginia Community College and has a lot of expertise in STEM. So we've been talking a lot about some of the coursework, some of the training that anyone can have in order to develop their skills. So let's sort of shift the focus back to you a little bit. So you've had this extensive career in providing service in some of our to protect the nation. Why did you leave a career working with the U.S. intelligence community to become a STEM coordinator at the Northern Virginia Community College?
I get that question all the time, but it's a story that I love to tell. I enjoyed my career working at the agency. It was something that most people dream of, being on what they call being on the inside, working with some phenomenal folks that do phenomenal, serious work to protect our country from adversaries and terrorism, both abroad and locally. So I learned a lot. I had some great opportunities. I had the opportunity to travel overseas to the Middle East, done some domestic travel as well, and worked on some very high profile projects that, if I told you about, I'd probably have to kill you. But I came to a point where I was preparing, ready to leave, because I've been doing volunteer work in the community around STEM education and had been developing programs with community organizations. At one point, I had partnered with Intel to do a citywide science fair in the District of Columbia for the kids to do science projects. And I saw that there was such a huge thirst and a desire on behalf of the community and parents to really find ways to get their kids connected. And I wanted to do more. I really wanted to do more. I found it a joy to be able to go out and speak to students about my career and what I was doing. And it always got them excited. It's like a light bulb would go off in their head when I talked about my journey and what I did. And there was at a point in time where a lady said, you know what, if you could do that full time, you'd be really, really good at it. And I was thinking, I wonder, but probably not going to pay me as much as I'm making as an engineer. So I'll consider that. But thank you for the advice. But like I said, the more I did it, the more I became interested in it, so much so that I actually started my own nonprofit back in 2009, the Center for Minority Achievement in Science and Technology. The organization is not around today, literally because I became a victim of my own success. I had so many folks reaching out to me, wanting me to do STEM programs with their kids, not just locally, but nationally, and I just didn't have the bandwidth to do it at the time because the recession had just kicked in when I started my nonprofit, so folks weren't giving as much. Right. But eventually the nonprofit worked well. I had some great partnerships. I did a kickoff event for the Obama administration around National Lab Day with some kids in D.C., and it was phenomenal. It stuck with me. And then once I went back to doing my work at the agency, I just found myself really not being happy. Right. I was doing my work, but I said, you know what? I don't feel fulfilled. I'm making great money. I'm being able to travel and do things, but there's something that's still missing, and I knew what it was. And it was the joy and the passion that I had to really go out and inspire others to pursue these careers, particularly as an African-American male. I didn't see a lot of that. A lot of events that I would go to, be tons of women, and I'd be the only male there. And the guys would look at me like, is he security, or what is this guy here for? But I was the only male that was there. But my vision for seeing youth and African-American children and all children get connected to these careers compelled me to leave my career with the agency and then take this position with Northern Virginia Community College. It was a difficult choice. I will say it was a very difficult choice, but it has proven out through the success that I've had in this role and partnering with other groups and organizations that this was the right move to make.
And I'm really glad that you brought that up, because I think a lot of folks struggle sometimes with, do I go for pay or do I go for passion? And what I always like to say to folks is, if you go after pay and you're miserable, what does that do for you? Yeah. But if you go after passion and you're happy and you don't feel like you're ever working, what does that do for you? Yes. And then you make the choice.
Exactly, totally. That was the thing for me. As you can imagine, engineers and scientists make some of the highest salaries in the country. So I won't go into details of what I was making, but it's a significant difference from what I'm now getting working in education. But the passion that I have for waking up every day and doing my job, and then also finding other ways to be able to supplement my income. There are things that I can do to help, programs that I've been involved with, consulting work that I've done on the side, working with school districts and some museums in the area that have helped to make up the difference. It's one of those things where I had someone who actually gave me the advice that if you really do what you love, the money will come. Right. That was what I was told.
And that's sort of how I feel as well, as build it and the money will come. Yes. Right? Yes. And then one of the other things that my first guest on my show, Rashawn McDonald, said, I go to sleep to wake up. And at first, that just didn't ring true to me. And then the more that I thought about it and the busier that I get in the different things that I'm trying to do, because there's so much that I want to do. Exactly. And I'm so passionate about doing it. now I understand as the work continues to grow. and that's a good thing.
Yes.
Because there's a need, and then you're able to fill a need. But as the work continues to grow, you're running on so many different levels.
Yes.
Mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. You're just exhausted. So you're like, let me get some sleep just so I can get up and do this again.
Exactly. And that's how I am with my job. When I worked at the agency, I was a 9-to-5 government worker. I didn't do anything past 5 p.m. I was done. My day was over. And I literally, out of my 13 years, I probably worked one weekend. But now in this job, it's 7 days a week. I mean, there are late nights I'm working on proposals to get grant funding. There are Saturdays and Sundays when I'm running expos for kids. There are camps that have to be programmed, T-shirts that have to be ordered for kids. I'm constantly doing something, but I can honestly say that most of my friends have never heard me complain about the work that I do because I'm so passionate about what I'm doing in this space.
And I want to pause for just a moment because I don't like to do it at the end of the show. So you had mentioned your website, which is Charles Britt. That's CharlesBritt.com.
That's correct.
Are there any other things that you've got upcoming that you want to tell folks about?
Well, again, as I mentioned, I'm working with April, who started off the show. I'm excited about this opportunity for us to partner to do a tour where we go around to different cities and communities and helping them understand the importance of STEM and how to help them build those partnerships. Doing this STEM work is all about partnerships because there's so many facets of it and folks that can so many folks that really could get involved and help really push this forward. We want to show communities how to do that and bring them simple tips and resources for getting that done. The other thing is although I just launched my website, so it's not complete, but it's there and it's got some valuable information. I've also started my own consulting firm. And it's called Destined to Succeed.
Okay.
And what I'm planning to do is work, DTD, Destined to Succeed. And I'm looking to help school districts, communities, churches, and other organizations find ways to connect them to STEM opportunities. Because oftentimes, much of the questions like you've asked, people say, well, how do I find this out? Or how do I find that out? I'm willing to come and help you do that. One-on-one, doing workshops, keynote speeches, anything that will help to inspire individuals and young adults to really get connected to the STEM field, because a lot of people, as you said, you kind of pulled the story out of me of how I got into the field and things like that. But I found that it's an inspiration to many. I would like to share this message broad and wide. So right now I'm working on figuring out how to make those connections locally as well as across the country to find a way to spread this message of how you can actually start one way, but you can end out on a totally different path, and how either way it's really about learning from those mistakes, being persevering, and understanding your self-worth. Once you understand what you're worth, the world is the limit.
Yeah, one of the things I always like to tell folks is that there's always value in the journey, even if the outcome isn't as you want it or as expected. You can always learn something from it. So let's shift one more time before the end of the show. What's your role as the Nova STEM coordinator? How would you describe that?
It's a dynamic role. I work across, I tell people sometimes one day I'm actually meeting with the superintendent of schools, and then the next day I'm sitting in a third grade class talking to a classroom teacher about how to implement a science lesson. So it spans the gamut. And in this role, my job is to work with the business community, the local schools, and institutions of higher education in Northern Virginia to find ways to build new programming or provide sustainability to existing programs in Northern Virginia to help our children fill the STEM worker pipeline. We have Northern Virginia, if you don't know, or at least the Fairfax area is considered the Silicon Valley of the East. Mm-hmm. We've got Google, we've got Facebook, we've got Amazon, Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin. All these companies are based just right here on the East Coast, so there's tons of jobs that need to be filled. And my job is to make sure that we partner and work together to get the kids on the right path so that once they leave high school, they go into college and they graduate with the skills that they need to be prepared. So it changes from day to day.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't ask you this question and I don't have time to ask it, but just seeing you light up as you're describing this just says everything. I know folks can't see you here, but I can tell that you're very passionate and it comes through very clearly.
Thank you.
As a minority male, what are you doing to recruit and engage minority students to become interested in STEM? Is there a specific initiative that you're working on? Is there something that Nova has to target minority males?
Yes. One of those is a robotics competition, VEX Robotics. I started in Fairfax County, and we partnered with the Department of Neighborhood and Community Services. So we actually bring an after-school program to the community centers where the kids go after school to be able to compete in a national robotics competition, and it is targeted toward minority males and female students. and they compete during the school year, and then at the end they go to a competition to see if there are students that advance. And it's been a very popular program, not just because of the STEM aspect of it, but because of the building their confidence, building their ability to do critical thinking and working in teams, something that our kids aren't oftentimes committed to or well experienced in, but it's been phenomenal. And we're looking to grow that across the county, but I'm also excited about working with other groups to help them build this same type of pipeline of workers for their community as well.
And, I just applaud everything that you're doing because, as we know, there is an underrepresentation of minorities in STEM fields, whether they're females, whether they're folks of color, whether they're Black, Hispanic, Asian, or whatever else. And we need to work towards developing more opportunities for folks to learn about STEM education earlier in their career.
Yes.
We've got about a minute left in the show. I'll just give you about 20, 30 seconds. Any parting thoughts you'd like to leave with my audience?
My parting thoughts would be really do your homework and investigate why getting your child into a program is so important. There are so many opportunities out there that are at no cost, where they'll provide scholarships if you fit a certain criteria. And they're really looking for minority students, from Google to Facebook. You name it. Companies coming to me all the time wanting to know, how can I get more minority students? So we've got to challenge our kids to take that risk. They may not feel like they meet the qualifications, or they may not even see themselves working for Google. But encourage your kids to take that risk and really get out there and take advantage of these opportunities.
All right. Well, we're going to have to leave it right there. Charles Britt, thank you for spending time today. I really appreciate your advice and guidance. I hope that you enjoyed today's show. On next week's show, my guest will be Sharon Tindall, who maintains historical information about the importance of the Underground Railroad quilt codes, history, importance, and the use to guide runaway slaves toward freedom. Remember, your candle is fueled from within, so don't let anyone reduce or block the fuel to maximize its brightness. Enjoy the rest of your week. Until next time, my friends, have a good one.
WOL